All right, it's talk time now. President Muhammadu Buhari has relaunched the War Against Indiscipline Brigade in Abuja, saying in this era of insecurity, kidnapping and other forms of social vices, the role of the brigade in civil intelligence gathering cannot be overemphasized.
We're joined now by the director of the National Orientation Agency in Lagos State, Waheed Ishoka. Thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning.
It's my pleasure being here again.
All right.
Yes, indeed. Now, let's even begin with the DG of the NOA, Garba Abari, who says the prevailing circumstances that led to the first Y, some 31 years ago, are still very much with us today.
Yeah.
One would then, wonder why bring it back if it did not, achieve its aim 31 years later.
I would say that I think we need to correct one impression.
Yes, please.
Because what is awash in the social media is that the president has launched or relaunched Y Brigade. Y Brigade has been in existence since 1984. What we had was a change of name about 4 years ago. It was rechristened by the then Director General of National Orientation Agency, Mr. Michael Mary, as a Community Support Brigade. Later, now that the founding father of the then Y Brigade, that is President Muhammadu Buhari, is now the sitting president of Nigeria. So I think the government thought it fit to now rename it again. But what happened on Monday was not a relaunch by the president. What we had on Monday by the Director General of National Orientation Agency, Dr. Garba Abari, was a repositioning of the Y Brigade to enhance them for civil intelligence gathering. However, what gladdens our hearts is the discourse in the public sphere of the Y Brigade. It goes to show that a lot of people out there have missed Y Brigade. Before, because of politics, we had PDP, we had APC. Y Brigade was in existence. Lagos State, for instance, started what they call Kai Brigade, which is almost the same thing as Y Brigade. But what Y Brigade fought then, when it was launched in 1984, is still here with us. You see people still behaving with a lot of impunity, people driving against traffic, corruption pervading our society, and all of that. And in 1984, when Y Brigade was in existence, during the military era, the fear of Y Brigade was the beginning of wisdom. One of those things that Y Brigade started, that is the kill culture, is still seen, can still be seen in Lagos, for instance. If you go to bus stops like Yaba, where people board BRT buses, you see people queuing up. If you go to the banks, it will be foolhardy of any person jump in the queue. Somebody will tell you, even if you go to the airports, you understand that culture of doing things right, was what Y Brigade brought. But what the present administration is trying to do is to launch a reorientation campaign, which is a national rebirth, which is coming on stream, which as a change begins with me. When we begin to see the leaders demonstrating the change mantra, when you begin to see our leaders queuing up at the airports, not jumping the queue. Because you see,
isn't that where the problem really is? They say leadership by example.
Leadership by example.
Driving through, yes.
Now that we have a leader that has zero tolerance for indiscipline, zero tolerance for corruption. When the leadership is good, every other person will fall in line. But when you see people, of course, you see people in uniform driving against traffic.
All right.
Every other person will want to follow suit.
Of course.
But now, what we're saying is that people in the hands of affair must toe the line. A lot of government resources is being used to ensure that people fall in line. Look at what is happening in Ojota, for instance. The wire mesh run across the expressway. The government is trying to protect citizens from losing their lives by crossing the expressway. Government has spent so much money, millions of naira, to construct pedestrian bridges.
Okay, we'll come back to this. Let's bring in Ebenezer Oyetakin joining us from our Abuja studio in here. Ebenezer, good morning. It's good to have you again this morning. Now, the issue of war against indiscipline, whether it has been in... All right. Now, whether it's been introduced or it's been reactivated, as the case may be, whatever term we use it, so many Nigerians have been reacting to this reintroduction or reactivation generally from after it was unveiled by the Director General of the Nigeria Orientation Agency. Now, from your perspective, you've been monitoring this issue. What has been your reaction? Let us get it before we delve into other technical aspects of it.
I honestly do not see anything wrong in relaunching the war against indiscipline. However, I am very cautious about this new relaunch. Number one, I hope it is not just a mechanism to catch the fancy of Mr. President from our people who probably have no definition of what the structure of the war should be like. Because it is not about the nomenclature. It is about if we have the right mechanism to carry out what is intended to achieve. Now, if you say war against indiscipline, are you targeting it against corruption, which is a product of indiscipline itself? If that is the case, the war against corruption has been going on through the body language of Mr. President. What I'm trying to say here is that I would have preferred an institutional approach to the fight against corruption, and probably want to avoid the use of the word war. Now, if we are to recultivate our society to key into a well-ordered society where discipline is the order of the day, we must take it to the grassroots. We must begin to recultivate our youth from the level of even primary school, secondary school, to tertiary institutions. We must constructively engage them in an orderly manner that erupts from our own spirit, our internal mind, not as a policy somersault or a nomenclature proclamation. For example, the former Minister of Information, Dora Akuyele, came up with Nigeria, great people, great nation, and things of that nature, and that kind of a thing. I once questioned her, what is the structure you put in place? Now, apart from being a sloganeering in one of our stations, it is no longer effective. We cannot continue to deal with nomenclature. Let us deal pragmatically with the problem. How do you introduce war against indiscipline to outrageously impoverished people in want of food to eat and things of that nature? How do you introduce war against indiscipline against a people that has closed into themselves to say, to your tent, Israel, government no longer care to us, for us? No. We must first of all recultivate our people, get them to believe in our national sovereignty as a people, then civilize them to know and understand that we have no any other nation to call our own, and that the project Nigeria is their own project. That is the way I think we can go.
Thank you so much, Mr. Oyetakin there. Just hold on. And of course, Director of NOA right here in the studio with us, Waheed Ishoka. Let's give you a background to this story. The war against indiscipline was a brainchild of President Buhari when he was military head of state between 1983 and 1985. He established the brigade to instill discipline among Nigerians as well as fight corruption, which was endemic at that time.
Now, 31 years after, President Muhammadu Buhari has relaunched or unveiled or reactivated the program. Let's go down memory lane. The war against indiscipline was rolled out in 5 phases in 1984. The first objective was the encouragement of customers and citizens to line up to board buses and mostly queue for high-demand services.
The second objective was to encourage hard work, which was introduced in May 1984. The third and fourth phases focused on patriotism and eradicating economic sabotage and corruption.
Now, in July 1985, the General Buhari administration launched the final stage of the program, which was environmental sanitation. A war against indiscipline gained so much popularity as Nigerians disciplined themselves to do the right thing. And Nigerians were ordered to form queues at bus stops. Civil servants who failed to show up on time at work were sanctioned, and minor offenses carried long sentences.
Now, students above the age of 17 caught cheating in exams could get prison sentences. Counterfeiting and arson could lead to the death penalty. After General Buhari was overthrown in a coup, the culture continued for a while. Successive governments paid little or no attention to it, and this led to the death of the scheme. Its only replica is the Kick Against Indiscipline Kai, set up in November 2003 and tailored in line with the war against indiscipline to monitor and enforce environmental law in Lagos.
Now, the Kai was established by the government of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu in Lagos, and so far the agency has been able to instill decency and public morality among Lagosians to a great extent. But Lagosians now patiently queue for buses, unlike what used to obtain in the past. More Lagosians now use pedestrian bridges. Dropping of dirt on major roads has been reduced to a certain level, while compliance to the laws banning street trading and hawking is gradually being adhered to.
Now, it is also worthy of note that the monthly sanitation exercise is still being maintained by the Lagos state government and indeed in some other parts of the country.
In many parts of the country.
The 1984 war against indiscipline was criticized for human rights abuses regarding freedom, justice and equality. It was also criticized for the high-handed nature of the enforcement, of the enforcement agencies or officers. According to the Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed, the war against indiscipline would be rebranded to be the change begins with me, CBWM Brigade, to instill public morality, social order and civic responsibilities in Nigerians. The National Orientation Agency, NOA, will be the body saddled with the responsibility of driving the new attitudinal change program. Okay. Very interesting background there. Those who are old enough to remember, 31 years ago.
And especially those who were victims, if I may use, or those who were penalized or who were punished by any offenses they must have violated at that time, will have stories to tell.
Absolutely. And then the question then is, can you really legislate morals, order and things like that? What is the place of civics, which I doubt very much still exists in schools today, where children are taught, their rights and, of course, their obligations to the state and all of that. Now, you talked about fear earlier, that, Lagosians, indeed Nigerians, were afraid then, 31 years ago when Y was first launched. Fear in itself, is it something that can sustain the vision that this government has in ensuring orderliness, discipline, eschew corruption and all that?
I think let's take it this way.
Yes.
First of all, the National Orientation Agency, about 3 years ago, spearheaded the relaunch of the reintroduction of civic education in our public secondary schools. So civic education is now in the curriculum of secondary schools. Now, Y Brigade, as at then, is a different ball game from now. You remember that then it was during the military era. So it was when people had to be coerced to fall in line. Now we are in a democratic setting where we need to appeal to the sensibilities of our people, because we cannot use force, anyway, to ensure that people comply with extant laws, because there are laws in place. There's a law in the state, for instance, that you must use pedestrian bridge. There's a law in the state that you must not, that there should not be street hawking, but people still do that. What we're saying is that if you look at the Constitution of Nigeria, there is the national creed, patriotism, hard work, and all of that. So what we're doing, and why the National Orientation Agency is the right place for this Y Brigade to spearhead this cause, is that at the National Orientation Agency, we embark on different kind of approaches to get to our various audience. We are a grassroots-based organization. Y Brigade is existing in all the wards of the local government in Nigeria. We have, the structure is that they have it in the local governments, they have in the wards, in the local government, and at the state level across Nigeria. They have a national commander, they have state commanders, they have local government commanders, they have unit commanders. Now, it is not about using force or flogging people. However, there are situations where there is need for people to be brought in line, especially people that will deliberately. You will be surprised that those of Nigerians that will drive against traffic are people that you think they know. When you see them suited up in tie and all of this, you see them trying to just, because of impunity.
Is it not because the rule of law, the justice system is not doing what it should do for people to be punished when they offend? But I will let you land on that. We have dug into our archives and found a 31-year-old video introducing the war against indiscipline to Nigerians.
All right, let's listen to the announcement made by Major General Tunde Diagbon in 1984.
You need to emphasize self-discipline and leadership by good example. Begin by drawing public attention to little but important everyday manifestations of indiscipline, such as rushing into buses, driving on the wrong side of the road, littering the streets, parks, and dwelling compounds, cheating, taking undue advantage of scarcity to inflate prices for quick monetary gains, constituting ourselves into public nuisances, working without commitment, and devoting little or no time to the upbringing of our children. Up to this moment, there has been no formal declaration of war against indiscipline. It is my pleasure, therefore, to declare today the launching day for the war against indiscipline.
Wow.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
31 years ago.
At that time, actually, like we were saying earlier on, the fear at that time was high. I remember in the villages that time, any child that is found missing, the child will be left there, but the parents will be punished.
Indeed.
Sometimes they soak gari in a basin, and the mother will be forced to drink that gari. You know, the different kind of things.
And like Oyetakin said, is it a question of nomenclature? Are we attacking...
Or sloganization.
Yes. Are we attacking the symptoms rather than the disease itself? How did we
at that
become
time,
an unruly people? And how can we get back online? Let's take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, there's a lot more. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're talking about the return of the war against indiscipline. Okay, let's just take reactions of some analysts on TVC's current affairs program, Journalists Hangout, and what they had to say about this.
There's no doubt about it. Our value system, has not really changed like that. The level of morality has even, sink deeper. And the major problem we have in this country is that of indiscipline and corruption, which are like double-edged sword that have been piercing the soul of our nation for years. So I think it is right time to do something about it.
I do not think that whatever the problems Nigeria has today requires a solution that failed in 1984, okay? For a variety of reasons. Yes, we know that there is need for us to instill public order, there is need for us to fight corruption, there is need for us to tackle a lot of issues. But you see, creating another tier of bureaucracy may not necessarily be the way out. If you know what Waheed did in 1984, you know what I mean, and understanding that this is the same Buhari who has come back. Under him, we have had bodies like the DSS, like the police and disobeying court orders and all of that. If Waheed is coming back, are they going to be better funded? I'm thinking, what is Waheed coming to do differently?
The introduction of war against discipline is a war against the rule of law. I don't believe it, because rule of law does not mean indiscipline.
Well, you heard comments there from analysts on one of our programs, Journalists Hangout, reacting there. And certainly, if you go on social media, a lot of comments are already awash on the social media, commenting. Some for, yeah, it's fine the way things are now. We have to change. Others are saying, well, it's a violation of fundamental human rights one way or the other. But let's bring in Ebenezer Oyetakin in here now. Now, you have been listening to you listened to the video earlier by General Tunde Diagbon launching the war against indiscipline in 1984, and then comments later on. Now, if we have to talk about the effectiveness of war against indiscipline, I'd like to make comparison between the Nigerian situation, where there has to be a stick to compel somebody to fall in line, and maybe someone in the United States who naturally has patriotism for his country. What does it take to really achieve that kind of situation from where we are right here?
Thank you very much. If you look at the body language of General Tunde Diagbon there, if you look at the manner of his presentation, you see an eruption from his heart. He was actually pushing out from the depth of his heart, understanding what he wanted to achieve as of then. And honestly, it was a pragmatic approach as of then. And look at him inside a military fatigue uniform. That is their own approach then. But even President Muhammadu Buhari himself today will agree with me that what he met on the ground now in Nigeria, the degenerate in our social value, our moral value, and things of that nature, the degrees of corruption in a mindless manner, will get even Idiagbon, if he can hear from the grave, to weep with blood rolling down his cheeks. Now, having said that, this declaration of war against indiscipline in this 2016 cannot bear the same potency as it bear that time. because we are now in a democratic system whereby we must culture ourselves to be disciplined to the art of nationalism and patriotism. That is the only mechanism that can be effective. You cannot be destroying the public schools, and the same people destroying public schools now built mushroom schools that have no field for students to exercise themselves or pupils to engage in social activities that can culturalize them towards nationalism and patriotism. Civic education is no longer a priority, but how much we will make through school fees that are out of proportion with the earnings of parents. We have a remunerative system in government that is itself is a fertilizer of corruption. You are paying somebody 18,000 naira and he's living in a house of 500,000 naira per annum, and you say you are fighting corruption. We should please come down from our horses, our high horses, and prioritize ourselves to understand the nitty-gritty of the enormity of problems we are having as a nation and deal with it from the root, so that all of these things will become a culture, an institutional-like culture to reorder society. It does not call for a kind of a nomenclature that will remind Buhari that once upon a time you declare a war against indiscipline. Now let us reintroduce it. I see it as catching the fancy of Mr. President and not actually to deal with the issues.
Okay,
they may have good intention,
hold on, let's come back. Let's go back to
Mr. Ishoka right here in the studio. You heard everything he said. I wonder if there's anything more one can add to that. Respond to what he has said. In essence, we seem to be attacking the symptoms rather than the underlying issues that are deeper than, you know, all these wars. And many people are already saying this president is fighting too many wars. What are the guarantees that he will even win? War against corruption, war against indiscipline, all kinds of wars.
You see, the president is
and the use of the word war itself.
You see, the use of the word war is semantics. You remember the president said that if we don't kill corruption will kill Nigeria. And corruption is fighting back already. Anyway. Now, you see, what we need to understand here is that we've had administrations that paid lip service to the issue of indiscipline and corruption. Now that we have a government that has political will to really go down and see how things are going to be done, to bring back integrity in service, to bring back patriotism, to bring back civic education in schools, to ensure that our people begin to understand that it is no longer business as usual, but business unusual. That the way we are doing, you know, you cannot continue to do things the same way and expect a different result.
Is that not what is happening in this case? I mean, we are going back to a project of 31 years ago.
Why war against indiscipline worked then? People fell in line. And that is why when you see those of us who are old enough to have seen what White achieved then are agitated. Now are saying that, hey, these people have come again. Like I said before, look at the money the Lagos State government has spent to do a median divide, mesh wire divide across Ojota now. That money could have been used for other developmental purposes. Just because you don't want people to kill themselves by crossing the expressway. You go there. People are already destroying those things. You say Okada should not pass some highways. You see them. Even men in uniform. So we have to reorientate ourselves. And that is what we're doing at the National Orientation Agency. We're going to the schools. We're talking to our traditional rulers, our religious leaders, the market men and women, the ordinary people on the streets.
Okay, let me ask you this before I go to before I bring Ebenezer in here. Now let's put war against indiscipline in 1984 on one side, and put the war against indiscipline as proposed right now, 2016 on one side. What's going to be the difference in these two when it comes to effectiveness of what it takes to have that outcome of Nigerians being patriotic and being in line and all of that?
There's going to be a difference. In 1984, we were under military administration, where force was the end thing. Now we are in a democratic dispensation. We now need the people in government to show and lead by examples. That, look, this is the way this country should move. You understand? You see a governor who is not blowing siren, using our money, our commonwealth, to, scare us. You understand? You see a leader going to the airport or getting to the bank, queuing up for services. You understand? The tendency for people to want to follow suit is there. We're now going to be appealing to the sensibilities of people. We can no longer use force. Like people were saying that the war against indiscipline then was going against the rule of law, was human rights, and all of that. That will not be done now.
Okay, let's just bring in Oyetakin before we let him go. Mr. Oyetakin, you did ask a question that I would like to, throw back at you. You asked how exactly this war should be prosecuted or executed. What kind of war against indiscipline do you expect to see now? You did say earlier that, that there seems to be a tendency to just use slogans and nomenclature and all of that. What would you like to see differently from what obtained 31 years ago?
Thank you very much. The director of NOA at your station there have been able to identify some way of going about it. But honestly, I will want them to recall themselves away from using that war against indiscipline. If you listen to him, he said, we will visit traditional rulers, we will visit this and we will visit that and get them to. That is the nature and character I want it to take. Let us get our pastors, let us get our imams, let us get our traditional rulers, let us get our institutions of higher learning, let us get our secondary schools, let us get our primary school for a social cultivation, a moral recultivations of value, what I will call attitudinal restructuring of the nation. Let us engage in a pragmatic attitudinal restructuring of the nation that will be constructively engaging. If a government is transparently honest, if a government is able to simplify its policies, directions, aims and objectives, and how it intended to reorder society and program it into a kind of campaign mechanism that will trickle down to the citizens, it will achieve more using the traditional ruler, pastors, imam, and every other institutions, even at the civil service level. This is the way I think we can get our society to be reordered. Okay,
Ebenezer Oyetakin, thank you very much for talking to us on TVC Breakfast. Thank you. All right, let me come back to you, Waheed Ishoka. The issue of the effectiveness. Now, okay, we know the war against indiscipline is going to be tagged, change begins with me, like you said earlier on. Now, you talked about leaders leading by example.
Yeah.
In the face of leaders leading by example, where they should queue when they get to banks or get to airports, but Nigerians still know that the major issue here is the issue of monies accruable to this, corruption when it comes to financial in financial terms, where security vote is still so high, Nigerians feel it's supposed to be like that, like the kind of scandal you hear at the National Assembly padding and all of that. When you come to example, how much of example are all of these issues when monies are missing, monies in the eye of Nigerians?
Let's get this straight. We're coming from a system, 16 years of impunity, and getting to a system where we have a president that has zero tolerance for corruption from his body language. And you've seen the way Mr. President has done. He's not really intervened in any of those issues that we've mentioned. That there are institutions of governments saddled with the responsibility of, intervening in those issues. Now, it behoves on our leaders. All of them were elected by us, and even us, the followers, to look at the caliber of people we elect to govern over us. We have opportunity to change them. Don't forget that there is the call in our constitution. If you feel that any of our legislator is not doing what he's supposed to do, there is a process of recalling them.
Okay.
This is what we're saying.
Well, I wonder how many Nigerians actually are aware that they have the power to recall their representatives in government, but we'll have to leave it there. Unfortunately, not enough time. All right, thank you so much, Waheed Ishoka, Director, National Orientation Agency, Lagos. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.